glad to see you, and I do believe that this experience we will get today will be of great importance for all of us, because for several years we have been dreaming to create our own Ukrainian encyclopedia of Ukrainian Shakespeare studies and Shakespeareana, as it is usually called, in which we would like to represent the information about all Ukrainian translations of Shakespeare, about theater performances, about critical works dealing with the bard's works, and I suppose that today we'll have a unique opportunity to ask the questions to our esteemed colleague. So, Emma, the floor is yours, and we are very glad to see you here with us in our project Shakespeare Days in Ukraine 2025.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes, yes.
So thank you for coming to this virtual presentation. It's a great honor for me to be able to contribute something to the Shakespearean Days in Ukraine. I have followed many of the events this year as well as in the past years, and I must say that I've been very impressed that you have all been able to organize this and participate despite the extremely difficult wartime conditions. So and I feel very honored that I've been given this space to share the project with you. And then afterwards, after I have a little PowerPoint presentation, and I will sort of give an overview of the project, and then you can ask questions, and we can talk more about I guess about the ideas and possibilities for a specifically Ukrainian Shakespeare encyclopedia of some kind. So could I share my PowerPoint?
Yes, yes, yes. There is a possibility for you to share your screen.
Okay, yes, okay. So I will... Oh. Okay. So is it sharing now?
Not yet.
No, okay. No. Correct. So is it just sharing? It's not sharing anything, is it? Let's try this.
Nothing yet. Oh,
okay. Is that
it has
okay.
stopped? Yes, yes, we can
Okay,
see.
Okay, okay. And then I can turn it to okay. Yes. Okay. And is it the slides? So is it the introductory slide now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. Perfect. Okay, so I will talk about how the encyclopedia kind of seeks to document Shakespeare, what its kind of goal is, and what it does, and how it does that. And I'll talk about the kind of the concept and the structure, as well as give you an idea of where we are, kind of where we are with it at the moment. So it's part of the so-called life reference series by Palgrave Macmillan, which is actually very broad. This is actually just a small fraction of the of our kind of fellow titles of other encyclopedias that they are developing at the moment. And you can see that they are actually very, very broad, that they're certainly not just from literature or even just from humanities. They're from sort of social sciences as well as business, and a lot of them have a kind of an interdisciplinary focus. The ones that they do have from literature often do focus on areas that had been previously underappreciated or understudied in various ways. So you can see that they have a Encyclopedia of Victorian Women's Writing, and they have early modern women's writing, for instance. So in a way, when we proposed Global Shakespeare to them and we were negotiating with them, we were presenting it as something that hasn't been sort of that has a lot of potential and a lot of relevant material, but that hasn't actually been done in a kind of systematic way, and that deserves to be done, and that is how we got in. And the life reference sort of concept is a very interesting one. It's only been made possible by the kind of very digital medium. So it's a reference work that's basically continuously being developed and updated online. So it's not something that has a kind of a definitive deadline. It's not something that gets finished and then published the way that a lot of monographs or articles do, or in fact the way that encyclopedias or other reference works used to be done in the past. So there's a kind of a launch date, which I'll show you when we had that. But there was a kind of a launch date when we had a small group of the kind of introductory of the first articles, and since then the project has been online as a reference work already accessible. And when new articles are written, once they're edited and approved, they actually appear. They are added, and so it changes virtually every week. There is something new. There is something new being added. And also things that have already been added, even though our encyclopedia is relatively new, so we haven't been doing that too much yet. But when something new is added, it can also be edited. So if somebody realizes that they would like to add something has changed about the topic, for instance, it's a translation they write about, and now there's a new edition of it, then it can be changed. It can be updated, and so articles can have basically it's like multiple editions of something of an article, etc. So and they can be sort of updated and sort of expanded by other authors as well. So it's something that sort of emphasizes how the reference work in a way grows and evolves along with its field and its subject. And you'll sort of realize that from the previous screen that a lot of the other topics that they have these encyclopedias on are indeed from kind of current areas of sort of social sciences and humanities that will tend to evolve and change. I mean, in some cases quite quickly. So they would become, otherwise they would become dated quite soon. And so it's actually a great resource to have this as something that can continue to grow this way. It's also very useful for the authors, because our philosophy is that it's better to have something that's perhaps shorter and not as definite as maybe people would like to do it under optimal circumstances, but because we have this live system, we can edit it, publish it, and then when a better version or a longer version of it is available, then it can be basically updated. So it's also the contributors themselves can have a slightly different kind of relationship with the writing than they would with something where they know that they are writing it, and it will be kind of finalized, and they will not really be able to change it once it has been sort of approved and submitted. We are currently in the stage that's called live reference. So it's all the articles. There's a website on the kind of Palgrave platform, and all the articles are there to be, and they can be referred to. Once we will have reached a certain number of articles, it's actually 600 roughly. We're not there yet, but once we have reached that, then it will become it will actually be published even as a volume, and at that point it becomes what's called a living edition. So there already is an edition of it, but that edition then continues also to grow and change, and then we hope that after a number of years it will kind of move on to, and there could be another edition. The whole series by Palgrave hasn't been around as long yet, so we don't have experience with these multiple editions sort of coming along. But that is certainly how it's hoped to be. Palgrave is actually now owned by Springer Nature, so you know how in the world of academic publishing these sort of big conglomerates have taken over. But the good thing about that is that they are very sort of willing and happy to provide the resources and to work with us and to make us part of this whole series. So we do have the confidence that this will indeed happen, that it will be around for many more years to come, and that it will continue to grow. It also means that the project is that at any given stage we have articles that are sort of being commissioned, that we are editing, that are being published. So the whole project is not at a kind of a single stage. We were never at a stage where we would just be editing everybody's articles, etc. So we have a lot of experience with all the different stages of the editing of the kind of publishing process. So that's another advantage. And of course, I'll talk about that more later. But because the focus is on global Shakespeare and on how Shakespeare is sort of adapted around the world, it is something. It's not the Shakespeare in the kind of historical sense as much. So it is indeed a field that does change. So it is also useful that as new adaptations of Shakespeare, as new translations are made, that we can actually commission new articles on it. So it's not a kind of a historical reference that would in some way feel like it's sort of being stated, or it is ossified. We feel very confident that it belongs there with all of these very kind of current interdisciplinary titles that you saw on the previous slide. So now why global Shakespeare? So I already started talking about that a little bit earlier. Why not simply Shakespeare? I mean, in theory, we could have gotten away with just calling it Shakespeare, the Palgrave Encyclopedia of Shakespeare, but we didn't quite want to do that. We wanted it to be global Shakespeare because we feel like we wanted to showcase the diversity of the kind of worldwide reception and production of Shakespeare's plays, and so that way that kind of worldwide emphasis is already there in this very short title of the whole reference work. It also presents Shakespeare as a global author with a kind of a worldwide reach and diverse afterlives in different countries and languages around the world. And this idea that Shakespeare is a global author and has always been a global author is then inscribed into the very title. Our aim is to offer a general overview of the history of translations, stage and screen adaptations of Shakespeare's plays in every country around the world. So that is the goal. It is a very ambitious goal, and it's something that will take us a number of years to reach. And because of the kind of living reference structure, it's not something that we necessarily have a kind of a deadline for, but we perhaps a kind of a broader but also a more kind of achievable goal is to really showcase the diversity. And I think in the present forum that we have at the moment, we are already managing to do that. The focus is on so there's an extra on focus is on the 21st century and second half of the 20th century, roughly, but material from the earlier period, so from before from the first half of 20th century and earlier, can be included where it's relevant as part of the kind of general background to how Shakespeare has figured in particular countries and cultural traditions and translations, etc., or where it's especially relevant, where it's a history, where we have, for instance, a history of a theater that has an important that made an important contribution to sort of stage productions of Shakespeare, and that theater dates from earlier than the second half of the 20th century. Then it would, of course, be included. But the focus is on the more recent periods, so on the roughly the past 75 years or so. That is partly because otherwise it would be almost too much material, because it is ambitious as it is, and it's a lot of material that we are seeking to include. Also because a lot of earlier encyclopedias and other kind of, I guess what we would describe as our competing titles did in fact tend to focus on a lot of the earlier material. So a lot of that has already been documented really well. And so if one of our goals is to do sort of new documenting, to sort of make material and information available that is not readily available elsewhere, or is not readily available in a kind of a single reference work, then it's important to focus on these more recent periods, because the earlier material, for instance, like Victorian Shakespeare in Anglophone countries has actually been documented, really well. So we didn't want to do something that would be effectively reproducing something that already exists elsewhere, and often exists, in fact, already in relatively accessible reference works. And one other thing that we hope sets it apart from other, I guess, Shakespeare, because there are a number of Shakespeare sort of encyclopedias of various kinds, or reference works, handbooks that are actually dedicated to Shakespeare. So one thing that we hope sets it apart from these, especially from existing encyclopedias, is that it does not privilege or focus on Anglophone material, so on productions or films that are already in English. They are included, but we do not prioritize them in a way and dedicate more space to them the way that tends to happen, and that has tended to happen in other reference work. In fact, in some way, I could say that we've kind of de-emphasized it again, because those productions and those films have already been kind of quite copiously documented elsewhere, and our focus is on giving a kind of an overview and information about materials from different countries around the world. So we do include, because it would be strange if we simply said that we will not include. It wouldn't work if we said we won't include the Anglophone material, but we include it with a kind of an emphasis on how it links, I guess, with an emphasis on its kind of worldwide connections, on how it is actually connected to productions, to reception, to adaptations from other countries, from around the world. So, for instance, we do have quite detailed entries on the Globe Theatre on the replica of the Globe Theatre in London, because that one is very richly connected to a kind of a worldwide performance tradition of Shakespeare. When we have Anglophone film adaptations, we again emphasize in them how the vast majority of the films and even of the stage productions have a kind of an international element, even though on the face of it they may appear like they are just in English and they are fairly straightforward adaptations. But so we try to emphasize that that is not necessarily the case. So it's the answer is that yes, we include basically all Shakespeare, but within that we try to have a coverage for each country, and we try to emphasize the kind of interconnectedness of the different traditions of the and of the different adaptations. So here is a kind of an overview of how it is kind of organized at a kind of a structural. I guess that from the previous slide I talked more about the kind of conceptual organization. So how it is organized structurally. So the kind of we had a lot of discussions about that. We struggled a little bit with it, with how to organize it, what the principle would be by which the entries would be organized, because a kind of the kind of loosest way, I guess, would have been just to simply organize everything alphabetically. There would be some kind of rule on how, an entry about a director starts with the director's surname and then the first name, and so it would be alphabetized by the director's surname. But that too would be we ultimately felt like that would be too chaotic, and it too would be kind of artificial, because the kind of alphabet in a way is just another kind of artificial tool of organization. Not to mention that when names are transcribed from other scripts, like it would be the case with Ukrainian, it would kind of create its own challenges. So we decided that we did need something more kind of specific than just simply have all the entries in a kind of a big pool and organize them, for instance, alphabetically. So we decided to go for a geographic organization. So we have the world divided up into kind of broad, just simply kind of geographic regions. With Europe, North America, South America, Middle East, South Asia, East Asia, and Australia and New Zealand, and then Africa. So those are our kind of main regions, and then within each region it's subdivided by countries, and of course even that presents its challenges. And the way that we work with it is that we go by the countries in their present form as the primary organizational unit. So we try to have our kind of ideal, or our goal is to have one quite long entry as an overview of the history of Shakespeare in that particular country, and then we have a series of related entries that sort of highlight the kind of most important theater productions, translations, screen adaptations, if they exist, theater festivals, theaters, kind of, and of course specific individuals as well. So there are influential theater directors, actors who have been in many Shakespeare productions. We include those as kind of shorter entries that are then cross-referenced with the main country entry. Of course, the challenge of that is that since we have countries in their present form, not all countries have been around for as long as the Shakespeare tradition there had been. So we include kind of retrospectively everything that had happened in that geographic region even before it became that country. So I'm from the Czech Republic, and so we include everything that happened in the region that is now the Czech Republic. Because Shakespeare tradition really dates from, in fact, to the 17th century, even though that's not our focus. But in the kind of in the country survey, it will start with sort of the mentions of the first traveling actors, Shakespearean actors that came to Prague. In fact, in the kind of first half of not long after Shakespeare himself died. So we have some records of Shakespeare performances there from the 1620s. It's long before the Czech Republic actually came into being in 1993, but it's included. So that is how it works. when we have a production or something that is kind of a cross that's sort of shared among countries, because, for instance, it was created by people coming from different countries, or because it's something that toured and was not tied to a specific region, then it is cross-referenced to multiple countries, because that's one of the advantages of it being in the digital medium, is that it doesn't have to be kind of physically compartmentalized somewhere, that it can actually be cross-listed, and it can, in fact, the same entry that way can actually appear under multiple countries. So that is one of the advantages of it being online, and in that kind of in a way kind of a non-linear format, in a way that a book that a traditional paper book is not. Well, once we have the paper edition, once we get the 600 entries, we will have to deal with the kind of entries that are affiliated with multiple countries. But for now, they are actually kind of cross-listed and appear under the multiple titles. We don't really have a limit on how many entries per country we can have. We currently have the most we would have for any given country is about 30. But of course, there is a potential for more. The minimum, it's better to have something than nothing. So the minimum, of course, is 1. And we don't necessarily start with the big entry. So we don't insist that we need to have the big overview first before we commission the shorter entries on directors or festivals, etc. We are happy to get anything, and then if somebody is writing the kind of long country overview entry later on, we will share with them, and they will have access to the shorter entries, and they will be able to kind of retrospectively cross-reference them so that they don't repeat the information that's already in them. So it's flexible. We don't really have a kind of a blueprint that would kind of require that the entries for a particular country be done in a specific order. And the way that it happens, because different contributors have kind of different styles and have different access to different information and sometimes different interests, the sort of suite of entries for each country will sometimes look somewhat different. There is not a kind of a uniformity that the kind of overview for each country would look exactly the same with all the information in the same kind of order. And I think that's a good thing ultimately, that it doesn't just read like a kind of a mechanical overview of facts that we get slightly, there's a kind of a narrative about each country, about each theater, about each director. I mean, the most complete suite of entries is in fact, it's not, you might think that it would be about the United States or the United Kingdom, because there's of course the most Shakespeare has been done there. But partly because we've kind of de-emphasized it, and we've really wanted to make sure that the project is global from the very beginning. So actually the most complete set of entries that we have is for Hungary, and that's partly because we have a very, very active group of Hungarian Shakespeare scholars who were very eager to divide the entries among themselves, and who kind of dug up every single production and every single film adaptation, every single translation, and really provided us with what we think is really a kind of an exhaustive coverage of Hungarian Shakespeare. It's really useful that we have that, because we can now share that with scholars who are kind of seeking to do an equivalent for another country, so they can get a sense of what that basically look like, how long the entries can be, and what that kind of coverage would look like. And the emphasis in it is for it to be ultimately user-friendly, because it is a reference work, and we don't expect, as it is an encyclopedia, we don't expect people to kind of read even when it's out as a volume, to be kind of reading it cover to cover. The emphasis is for it to be kind of cross-referenced in a user-friendly format that makes it possible to explore it in various kind of non-linear non-linear ways, and for it to be searchable. So each entry has keywords and cross-referencing to anything else that's already in the encyclopedia. When somebody does an entry, we also kind of anticipate that there will be cross-referencing, so we kind of make note of that and hope that when somebody does entries that we hope to have in the future, we will kind of retrospectively add the cross-referencing to things that are already there. But even in the limited format that we have at the moment, it's cross-referenced quite well, and it is possible to kind of explore different. For instance, to look at how a particular play has been adapted in different countries, or a festival will have cross-referencing to the foreign directors, the other directors from other countries that have participated there. So very much, while the kind of specificity of the specific countries might suggest that Shakespeare happens in a kind of a compartmentalized way in specific national traditions, the very kind of the emphasis on the cross-referencing also tries to challenge that and remind the users that the productions and ultimately this kind of global Shakespeare phenomenon means that all these theater practitioners, film practitioners, translators, that they are interconnected in various ways. And ultimately that's the idea behind the whole encyclopedia, is that Shakespeare is this kind of global author that has a kind of continues to kind of operate in around the world, and that crosses borders very easily, and has been doing so for a long time, and continues to do so. So here is the team. So the general editor is my colleague Alexa Zhuban at George Washington University. She's actually one of the kind of, I guess she can be described as the founder of Global Shakespeare Studies. So it's great that she was able to become the main editor of this. And then I am the kind of associate editor at the moment, but we will have my former PhD student Caitlin joining us to work as the other associate editor from next year onwards. So we will kind of get back to having a slightly bigger team, partly because it is a kind of a long-term project over many years. The way that it works is that the editorial team can in fact change, because people don't necessarily always have the luxury of making a multi-year commitment to continue to work on it. We also have a technical kind of a team of technical editors at Palgrave, without whom we wouldn't be able to do it, who do the kind of cross-referencing and thing. They ultimately enter it into the platform and do all of the technical work, make sure that all the reminders get sent out, and they administer the platform behind the scenes. They're actually located in India. The office was at some point moved basically from London to India as part. It's kind of ironic, but I guess as part of the kind of the way that global economy has evolved and has been evolving. So Palgrave kind of outsourced a lot of its labor to India, but the team has actually been wonderful. They respond to everything, and we are very satisfied with them, and we wouldn't be able to do the work without them really. So here's the timeline. So I mentioned that we've already worked on this for a number of years. So it was launched in 2018 at the Modern Language Association convention in New York City, and that's when we basically commissioned when we approached the first group of contributors, and we commissioned the first group of entries. So it's been going on for about this beginning of 2018. So it's been going on for about 7 years. The online, it went live in 2020. So it took about 2 years for us to gather that initial suite of entries. But since then it has been live. So it's been working as a reference online for 5 years. and we've been continuing to sort of edit it and improve it. In 2026, we're hoping to have a kind of a first limited print version with 300 entries. We're still about 70 entries short of that, so we might have to push it back. But that is our kind of most immediate goal, and then the next stage after that, for the next 5 years or so, would be to keep editing it and to get to 600 entries. 600 entries is what Palgrave kind of has as its kind of goal for it to be really kind of a solid reference work. It's quite a lot of entries, partly because I think our entries tend to be a bit longer than for some of the other reference works that they have, because we like to have the long entry on each country, on the productions, etc. So I think in a way we've kind of made the job a bit harder for ourselves than some of the other editors of the other encyclopedias. But the kind of big goal is to have about 600 entries, and then we would have a kind of a proper paper edition of it as well, and beyond that it would continue to grow, and they anticipate that the sort of more editions of it can appear if once you add another several hundred entries. So here is, I guess I've mentioned what some of the entries are like. So here are the kind of formats for the entries. So the kind of most important thing in a way is the kind of Shakespeare in X country, which would include a history of translations and the stage and screen adaptations. And within that would be included, festivals, the history of the theaters, etc. And that can be anywhere from 3,000 to 8,000 words. So it's actually long. It is almost like kind of a short article, not just like a kind of a short entry in an encyclopedia. And then the kind of shorter entries, there can be quite a few different ones, but the most common ones would be ones on theater or other performance venue, Shakespeare-related festival. We've tried to emphasize those because since our topic is global Shakespeare, festivals are often where practitioners from different countries come together, and what is the kind of Shakespeare that's performed at these festivals is very much global, and they are kind of, in a way, events that have really kind of have helped to make Shakespeare more global. So we do try to have coverage for really all kind of international Shakespeare festivals. Then we have entries on notable individuals, so it would be directors, translators, dramaturgs, actors, film directors, etc. And those can be from, and the shortest we would have for an entry would be about 300 words, up to 2,000. Sometimes it can be a bit longer if it's somebody who is very who is very prominent. For instance, like an entry on Kenneth Branagh would be fine for that to be longer than 2,000 words. And then another category would be notable stage productions or film adaptations, or even print adaptations, like a novel based on a play, and that's between 1,000 and 3,000 words roughly. And of course there is I guess once you look at this, you realize that, especially with the last two categories, with the notable individuals and with the notable productions or film adaptations, there are of course many, and so it's kind of up to us and up to our contributors to interpret what is notable, and it's ultimately a kind of a subjective thing. And if somebody has an interesting article that they can write for us, we are kind of open to accepting something that maybe conventionally wasn't considered necessarily extremely notable, but if it's interesting, and especially if it's for a country where we don't have as detailed coverage yet, we are quite happy to accept it. So our emphasis is to be kind of inclusive in a way rather than exclusive. Also, because since it is online, we don't have a kind of constraints. We don't really have constraints of space. And if somebody isn't interested in reading it, they can simply skip over it, or they don't have to, you know, they can read something else, since it's not the kind of linear. It's not the kind of linear project where somebody would be expected to read through the whole thing to be able to understand it or follow it. And within the kind of the long entry on Shakespeare in X country, in some cases that can be subdivided. So we can have somebody writing on the history of translations, and somebody else might be able to write on the history of stage and screen adaptations, or just stage adaptations. So it doesn't have to be done by the same person or even by the same group of people. It can be kind of collated together from these different. So for the kind of complete coverage of Hungary that we have at the moment, we actually had a different person was doing translations, different person was doing stage adaptations, and different person was doing film adaptations. In some cases, sometimes it is done by the same person, but again, there is a kind of a flex. We emphasize a kind of flexibility. So this is where we are. This is where we are now. So this is kind of showing from the entries that are at some stage of being produced, but that can mean that they are commissioned, and we are hoping that the person who has signed up to do them is, you know, working on them. But they are, so it's all the entries that have either been basically commissioned, and some of which have already been published. And can be, in fact, are available as part of the reference, and can be updated, etc. To the ones that have just been commissioned and we're not sure yet at what stage they are. We do have some that are overdue. That we are very flexible. So when somebody's writing entries for us, we are happy to extend we periodically kind of we get in touch with the contributors, and we offer to extend the deadlines. But overall, I'm quite happy. It looks much better than it did 2 years ago. We didn't have we had a much bigger chunk of the yellow and of the red when I was actually doing a presentation on it about 2 years ago. So I'm happy to be able to share with you this version that actually shows that out of the entries that had been commissioned, the majority, in fact, quite a large majority of them had either been already published and are available, or are in what's called in production. So they've basically been approved and are being technically kind of edited and approved by Palgrave. So this is our kind of future trajectory. This is how far we have to go to get to the 600 entries. It is actually quite a lot. So we would still need to produce about 364 chapters. I mean, that will be, you know, several years work. And once it is published as a volume, we anticipate it will be about 1,000 pages or a little more. To get there, we are actually at the moment trying to commission more kind of shorter entries and encourage people to write a larger number of short entries, because Palgrave wants there to be a number of sort of short entries that can be cross-referenced so that it works as that kind of proper reference work. And here is the section. I just did like little screenshots from my kind of view of the platform that I get as an editor, that shows the entries that we have for Ukraine. So these are at various. They are also at various stages. So several of them have been published and are already sort of functioning there as little articles that people can look at and read. Some of them are commissioned and haven't been written yet. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. we have 10, so we have 10 articles for Ukraine, which actually isn't so bad. I mean, it's more than we have for a number of other countries. Even though we would very much like to expand that. So if anybody, and we actually have several people here who have written these here in our meeting. But if anybody can think of anything that is not covered there and would be interested in writing an entry on it, please let me know, and we will be very happy. We will be very happy to commission it. We don't have, and I can share the examples. I can share the examples of the ones that have already been written for Ukraine, but we have examples pretty much for everything else. So we have selected a group of entries that we think are especially good, and we share these as examples with future contributors, just to use as a kind of an inspiration, as a kind of template to get a sense of how it is, how they are structured, how they are written. So here's some useful information for sort of how the entries work. So it does count as peer reviewed in the kind of Western academia sense of peer reviewed. So it can be put on CVs and such into your publication record. They can be done by a single author, or they can be co-authored. Most often they would be, if they are co-authored, most are single authors, so most are just written by one person. But when they are co-authored, it's usually by two people. We have a few that are by three authors. We don't have more than three authors. Sometimes the co-authoring can work in the way that one person, if it's for the kind of people from outside of the Anglophone academia, that one person might be the kind of one person primarily came up with the ideas or with the information, and the other person kind of translated it or edited it into English. That is sometimes how the division of labor works, but that's not how it inevitably has to be done. We do in fact offer what's called enhanced editing support. It's kind of supported by Palgrave that way, and it's designated as a publication that kind of seeks to accommodate and help people who are not native speakers of English participate in it and publish in it. So we provide a kind of enhanced editing support that includes kind of improving it so that it's written idiomatically and correctly. Here is some more. I guess I can share that with Natalia afterwards, and she can forward this to anybody. So you can actually go to the now, one thing I haven't actually mentioned that is not kind of optimal about it, but it is the nature of a lot of sort of publications, is that it's not open access. It's edited by Palgrave, and Palgrave is very much in fact, Palgrave works as a kind of a commercial publisher in some ways. It's not a university press, and so it is not free. It's marketed along with all the other live reference encyclopedias, and it tends to be there as one of the databases that if you go to a library's website, they will show you that they have. So it has its website that's based on that's sort of administered by Palgrave, and it has all of the information there. The main website is the kind of basic website is free, so you can look at the main website, and there are a few sample entries that are freely accessible. The whole encyclopedia, unfortunately, is not freely accessible, but I am happy to share if anybody wants to look at any entries or get any other information about it. I am happy to share that. Now, if you become a contributor, you actually do gain access to it. So that is an advantage, is that anybody who becomes a contributor will then get access to the full kind of website in a way, and you can look at the other entries. You will get access to a version of the website that's not kind of publicly available, and we do have the sample entries there that we kind of quite carefully selected and edited to make sure that there are good examples of the kind of genres of entries that we have. But as I said, I also kind of make a point of sharing because sometimes when somebody is offers to write something, I can think of entries that are maybe more relevant or more specific, and that would work as better kind of samples. So I also share that. I can share those with people in addition to the sample entries that are already available there. It often goes through multiple rounds of edits as well. So it's so if somebody submits the entry, we edit it with at the moment with Alexa, and then the technical editor in India also does some kind of basic editing to make sure that the format is correct, and the person kind of implements the edits, and we look at it again. So it goes through. It often goes through multiple rounds. It's done on the platform is quite good and quite efficient. So it's actually I'm overall very happy with that, and it also stores all of the versions of the entries from earlier. So it's very kind of easy to work with the entries basically that way. So that's it. And I can answer any questions, or I guess we can talk about the kind of idea for a Ukrainian Shakespeare encyclopedia as well.
Thank you very much, dear Emma. It was very, very interesting for us to learn about this encyclopedia, and probably, even not probably, I'm absolutely sure that you have inspired us to join this project and to prepare some entries, some information which could be included into Palgrave Global Shakespeare Encyclopedia about Ukraine. Some Ukrainian entries, I'm absolutely sure, must be written by our colleagues who have just listened to your presentation, and I suppose that they will do something. Well, I have seen Bogdan's hand. You're welcome.
Yeah, hello, Emma.
Hello.
Yeah, so first of all, yeah, is it possible to hear me right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
So first of all, I would like to thank you very much for such a wonderful lecture. It was especially useful because I gave a speech on the typology of electronic Shakespeare encyclopedias. And your encyclopedia, by the way, was the primary example. So this helped me to understand which important aspects should be mentioned. Yeah. And of course, I want to take this opportunity to thank you again about such a warm welcome in Dublin. Yeah, so after Trinity, I started reading a lot of literature with great pleasure. Even started with writing a text based on the Spencer's work. And yeah, so actually I have one question based on the inner content of the encyclopedia. So how do you think, based on the articles of your encyclopedia and your personal experience, how do you think, do Asian and Arab researchers use Shakespeare's works to explore questions or represent the issues of gender and all those topics which are connected to social obligations of the sexes, or it's a prerogative of European or American scholars? So could you compare if it is possible?
Okay. Yes, they definitely. I mean, they definitely do, and they often do in kind of interesting, in very kind of interesting, almost kind of heretical ways. There's actually a very famous King Lear film by the Japanese director Akira Kurosawa, and in that one, the three daughters are changed into three. I mean, it's kind of adapted so that the plot is three sons instead of three daughters. And that's because in a kind of Japanese culture, kind of daughters being disobedient to a father would be much kind of harsher and less socially acceptable. So it's changed to sons, where there is a to make it kind of more in a way kind of more realistic, and it's set in kind of samurai Japan, and the interesting thing is that there is kind of an analog to every element really of King Lear, and King Lear has a very complicated plot, but this kind of screenplay that they create instead kind of manages to really preserve all of the kind of dynamics and the events from the plot. But one of the big changes, among the changes that sort of make that possible, that facilitate that, is that there's the switch in the gender. So it's the sons, and then the sons have wives, and so that whole kind of dynamic from King Lear is really interestingly flipped. And some of the adaptations from the Middle East also do kind of similarly interesting things. There's a very interesting adaptation of Hamlet by a Kuwaiti director called Al Hamlet Summit, and in that, that in Hamlet Ophelia commits suicide, and in this version she commits suicide by being a suicide bomber. And again, that's quite a radical, it's obviously a very kind of a radical reimagining of the element from Shakespeare, but it's one that works really well in that setting, because it's set in a kind of a generic, non-specific kind of war-torn Middle Eastern country. So they often do, and often in a kind of an in-your-face way. So it's kind of they also almost kind of exploit some of the stereotypes that Western audiences, would have of the settings, because many of these are, even the Kurosawa film was made with a view to being kind of an international success. Being he was already kind of a famous director in a kind of an auteur in a kind of a global cinema, on the kind of global, in the kind of world of global cinema. And the same with this Kuwaiti director. Actually wrote this play in English. It was only translated into Arabic later, and not by him, by somebody else. And so they very much do, and it actually creates really interesting results.
Yeah, thank you so much. And
Thank you
sorry,
for the question and for the brilliant answer. It seems to me that we have not many students here, because the majority of our audience today is represented by the university teachers and by scholars, but I'd like to appeal to the students. It seems to me that it could be a brilliant topic for your research, maybe for Shakespeare contest, which we are going to organize in summer. Not in summer, but in autumn, sorry. So thank you very much, Emma, and thank you very much, Bogdan. Bogdan, if I'm not mistaken, you would like to go on or to express something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just, I wanted to specify, what was the name of the film you mentioned, Japanese film?
It's called a Ran, R-A-N.
Ran.
It's like a Japanese name, yeah.
Other questions, please? There is one question in our chat. In chat, Svetlana Daineka. Dear Emma, it's a great pleasure to attend your lecture. Thank you for this extremely informative presentation, all the explanations and details about the project. My question is short. Is this encyclopedia included in scientometric databases such as Web of Science and Scopus?
I suspect that it's not, because it's not a journal, unfortunately. So it is peer reviewed, but not included in the metrics, unfortunately.
Thank you. And who would like to ask the next question? While you're thinking about your question, I'd like to ask my own. And my question is the following. I have a kind of request. Could you show us searchability of your encyclopedia? If it's possible to show it just now via internet, probably.
Okay. So let
it's
me
important
see. Okay,
for us as a practical experience.
Yes, okay, so let me see. Because I have to stop there. See, because I have the kind of editor's view of it. So I am not sure. Okay. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't really have
It's impossible.
access
Okay.
to the kind of, yeah, to the
Okay,
kind of
probably-
user interface, basically, yes.
Okay,
I
so
can
probably we'll
show
discuss it later. Mhm.
I think I can show one. Let's see if I can see if I can at least look at the sample entry. Because I have the editor's view, and that is that just gives me the kind of manuscript versions that are actually not where the cross-referencing doesn't work by a click.
So then my question probably
Oh, I
will
apologize.
the following. Sorry, Emma, maybe it would be very interesting for me to learn, should the authors make these cross references? For example, if I'm writing about Shakespeare Festival in Ivano-Frankivsk, and I will mention the names of contemporary theater directors, and then there is an article about, or the paper, the entry about Rostislav Držipilsky,
Mhm.
example. Should I mention his name in a specific
Mhm,
way, and then to
Uh,
give the possibility for the readers to learn about this director from this very encyclopedia? How
Mhm.
does it work?
So if it doesn't, so if the entry that you would like to cross-reference doesn't exist, if it's kind of a prospective kind of cross-referencing, then you wouldn't do it yet, but we would make it, but you can let us know to make a note that it should be cross-referenced once the entry is written. I mean, what we can also do is that we can kind of block out entries where we don't have a contributor yet, but we already we haven't been doing that kind of programmatically. I think in some of the encyclopedias they do it. They just kind of create entries, entry titles, and they don't have contributors for them yet, and then contributors kind of sign up for them, and we don't do that. We have these kind of these kind of empty entries only where somebody had originally signed up to do it, and then they withdrew and they didn't do it. So we've then kept it open for somebody else, but we can make a note that it should then be cross-referenced. If the other entry already exists, then it's very simple. Then it's just there is just a way to let the technical editor in India know, and he just creates it. I guess they kind of translate it into a kind of a code, basically, the entries with all the cross-referencing. The entries already also have a kind of an abstract. They call it definition rather than abstract, but they have an abstract at the beginning, so that's more important for the longer ones. That gives a kind of an overview of what the entry is, so that it can be kind of surveyed, I guess, faster than the whole entry. And they have a kind of a uniform format. So there's this definition, keywords. The titles also follow a kind of a formula so that they are searchable and relatively uniform. Then there's a body, and there's a little conclusion. And actually the cross references are also listed at the end, so you can kind of just quickly look through each entry, and you will actually already see what it's cross referencing. You don't have to look at the entry itself; it will be at the end of the entry listed at the end.
Okay, so and the next question is the following: does it make sense to think about a kind of prospect or the plan? You have mentioned that there are 31 entries from one country. As far as we have seen, it's about 10 from Ukraine now. So we have the possibility to write about 20 entries. Yes?
Or more.
And probably during summer vacation or maybe in autumn, Ukrainian Shakespeare Center is able to make a plan which articles should be or which entries should be written by us, and try to think about references. For example, if one person writes about this or that text by Shakespeare represented in translation, maybe another person will write about performances, and that they will work as a team.
Mhm.
Maybe it's quite possible for them, as you have mentioned, to write one entry together, or even 3 authors can do it. Am I right?
Mhm.
Does it make
Yes,
sense
yes.
to discuss before start
Mhm.
writing something? Maybe
Yes,
to
that's
discuss
very
the
useful. Yeah.
we compose the plan of the possible entries, and could you be so kind as to help us to choose the most interesting for the future readers, the most interesting entries? Is it
Mhm.
possible?
Yeah, that is actually very useful. Yeah, and I think that's how the Hungarian team kind of did it. They did confer, and
Mhm.
they kind of agreed on what would, so that way well, they felt like there were no major gaps, and that it was
Mhm.
that it was a kind of
Great.
a very good coverage. We're not always that lucky, so we don't always have a whole team basically. So they don't not all of the countries quite work out that way. And sometimes we're just glad to have a couple of short entries. And again, our philosophy is that it's better to have something now than nothing, or than to wait for something more substantial for later. So the kind of individual countries, kind of suites of entries can kind of evolve in these different ways. But yes, if it's a group of scholars who are students who are already, because it doesn't have to be, we have graduate students sort of writing some of the entries as well. If they can confer and kind of plan it, do it in a more programmatic way, that is actually in a way more that is more kind of efficient.
Okay, thank you very much. I suppose that we'll be able to create such kind of team, and then we'll suggest our plan, and probably you'll find the possibility to discuss it with us one day in Zoom, okay? Thank you. Are there any other questions? Дар'я Москвитина.
Hello, dear Ema. Nice to see you. And again, it's about Encyclopedia, of course, but you mentioned that there are kind of there is very rich representation of all the countries, almost all the countries, and there is at least one entry per country. But are there totally unrepresented countries? And if there are, what do you think? Why is it so?
No, we do have countries that are totally unrepresented. I guess, unfortunately, like most countries in Africa, we don't have. We know that there definitely are traditions for some of them, but we have, like for North Africa, because there is a kind of a big tradition of Shakespeare in Arabic. So we like Egypt has a very rich tradition, in fact, of performing Shakespeare, but we don't actually have those entries yet. But for especially kind of a sub-Saharan Africa, we don't have. We would love to have entries on each country, because we have sort of looked into that, and even if there isn't like a big national theater that has done a lot of Shakespeare, there have been at least school productions, for instance, in English language schools. So there are some translations, but that is an area that actually still needs to be still does need to be developed. So no, we do have big kind of gaps. I guess it's a whole concept in global Shakespeare of these kinds of blind spots on the map, and sometimes it seems like there actually are very few genuinely blind spots where no Shakespeare has been done. But of course, the access to it is harder, and so sometimes it's just the blind spot is a more like a reflection of our own kind of a lack of a kind of a connection to that region, and ultimately our kind of ignorance as Western scholars of the tradition. I mean, in fact, in some cases, the traditions can also, the materials can actually be destroyed and disappear. And well, that's actually relevant in Ukraine as well, because things can, as you well know, like archives can be hit by a rocket and destroyed. And that when we have a section on Afghanistan, for instance, which one of my PhD students who did a lot of research, she didn't manage to go there because it was already too dangerous, even when it was a bit more stable there. But since then, a lot of these links, for the productions that were done at the university there, for instance, have disappeared, and the university has, of course, been largely shut down and they can't do, as far as we know, they can't do Shakespeare there. So also, even as we are working on this, even as we've worked on it over the sort of few years that we've done it, we've already seen that, you know, we have this kind of tradition that has kind of become much less accessible and available, because my student had a whole list of productions that had been recorded that had been done in Afghanistan, and the websites have just gone sort of silent, and some of them she unfortunately hadn't downloaded or hadn't preserved, and it just reminded us that it is important to try to preserve the things, because in the online space, I guess it's both a kind of a concern for physical archives, but also in the online space, things can kind of disappear.
Thank you. Fortunately, that's true.
So, are there any other questions? I'm reading our chat. No questions, only thanks and expressions of gratitude. So my question is a little bit pragmatic. How much does it cost for ordinary readers, for students and university teachers to get access to Palgrave Encyclopedia of Global Shakespeare?
I would have to find out. So I'm actually not sure. And I suspect that you will not find very many people who would have a kind of individual. It will be something like JSTOR, where you will not find very many people who have individual access to it. It will be usually done through libraries. Yeah. And I mean, unfortunately, Palgrave is not very flexible, because another encyclopedia that I've been involved with is the literary encyclopedia, which is actually a great resource. So that's for all of literature. And I've done some entries on Shakespeare films for that one. I was kind of a sub-editor for Shakespeare film adaptations for that for a while. And that one is kind of communally owned. That one is not owned by one of the publishing conglomerates. And that one even has a program where, I'm not sure how they define it, but they do have a way for universities in developing countries to actually apply to get access to it for free. And they have a kind of a staggered kind of a subscription model. So that one has a much better, has in a way a much better accessibility, but it doesn't come with the kind of platform and all of the, you know, that kind of managing team and editorial team like the Palgrave Encyclopedia does. It's very much kind of managed by the you know, the scholars, and I think there's actually one employee for the whole part-time employee for that whole encyclopedia.
Thank you very much. We'll try to find if our Ukrainian university, maybe in Kyiv, maybe Yulia Vishnitska, ask her, the head of the director of her library at Kyiv, Boris Grinchenko University, maybe they have already had the access to this encyclopedia,
because it's included. I think it's included with all of these other live Palgrave encyclopedias. So which actually does help, because often I know in the Czech Republic some of the universities in fact do have access to it, because like the business school wants access to the, you know, to the Encyclopedia of Global Business or whatever it is called. And so in fact, I think the fact that it's included like this in this kind of omnibus subscription is really helpful, because if it was separate just for the humanities ones, or for even just for the individual ones, it would be much harder to get libraries to actually realistically pay for it. But when it's part of a big kind of reference thing that can be used by people in like economics and law and health and other disciplines, it seems to be much easier to get libraries and institutions to agree to basically get the access.
Thank you. And I have one question more. On your slide that is called Where We Are Now, there was a specific sector on the diagram that is called pending. What does it mean, pending? Could you explain?
I think the pending ones are ones that have been commissioned but are not overdue yet. I think that is basically it. So they are in our minds. They're at some stage of being prepared for us, even if that might be just in the contributor's mind and they haven't started writing it. But they've already been commissioned and they're not overdue yet. So, but we are very flexible with the extensions. So the initial deadline can be set as far away as a year in advance, but that can be subsequently extended. So I mean, it's just me and Alexa who sort of approve the extensions. So we are very, we are happy to extend these.
Thank you very much. I do believe that after your lecture, not only Hungary, but Ukraine as well
I
will
hope
be
so.
widely represented in this encyclopedia. And I hope that we will meet in Ivano-Frankivsk during the festival this year. And by that time, I hope to have a kind of plan. What should Ukrainian Center do in order to create 31 entries for you per Ukraine, okay?
You can have more, and then Ukraine will be the country that has the most, and then we can present Ukraine as the model country that has the most, has the best coverage.
Thank you very much. And I would like to pay attention to the fact that Ema Vyroubalova has learned the Ukrainian language since the full-scale invasion began. Я б хотіла сказати, що Ема вивчила українську мову. Можете собі уявити, від початку повномасштабного вторгнення Росії людина почала вивчати нашу мову і вивчила її. І нещодавно повернулася зі Львова. Am I right, Ема? Так?
Так, я була у Львові в Українському католицькому університеті на курси української мови. Так. А це була одна з моїх мрій, там потрапити, щоб там студувати. Так.
Ми приємно вражені тим, як ви ставитесь до України. Ми дуже вдячні і за потужну підтримку моральну, підтримку духовну, культурну, за донати для ще не витрачені нами. От зараз буде, ви декілька разів, ваша родина, ви і ваш чоловік, перераховували кошти на волонтерську групу «Шекспір», і дещо ми вже придбали і звітували про це, але є ще останній транш, який ви надсилали, ми ще не витратили його, як тільки витратимо, обов'язково будемо звітувати. І ще я б хотіла подякувати за те, що ви працювали з нами в журі дитячого конкурсу. Це був конкурс, в якому українські школярі змагалися в 3 номінаціях. Це був підпис або використання шекспірівської фрази під фотографією, під відео і в живому інтерв'ю. І от Ема була членом нашого журі, і я б дуже хотіла подякувати. Тут у нас декілька зараз членів журі: Дар'я Анатоліївна, Богдан Васильович і Ема. От ми в 4 були на цьому конкурсі. Конкурс був дуже вдалим. І я безмежно вдячна вам, Ема, за те, що ви слухали наших дітей, працювали з нами в журі. Для нас це було великою честю і величезною приємністю. Велике вам спасибі. Спасибі за сьогоднішню лекцію, яка розширила наші уявлення про те, якою має бути енциклопедія, яка надихнула нас на те, щоб з одного боку написати статті про українських перекладачів, режисерів, про українську шекспіріану часу війни, можливо. Ми порадимося з вами, які це мають бути статті. І я сподіваюся, що наша команда це обов'язково зробить. А також цей досвід дуже корисний для нас. Ми все ще продовжуємо мріяти про нашу про енциклопедію української шекспіріани. І я сподіваюся, що після нашої перемоги ми зможемо цю мрію реалізувати, в тому числі завдяки вашій дуже потужній інтелектуальній підтримці. Велике вам спасибі. Thank you very much for being with us in this terrible days of Russian-Ukrainian war. And your support, your family support, I'd like to thank your husband and you personally for being with us in your prayers during different demonstrations which have been organizing in Dublin by the university staff of Trinity College and by some activists of Ukrainian communities. Thank you very much for have brave to come to Ukraine in this dangerous period. I mean, the first festival, which took place last year in June 2022, and we'll be happy to see you this year in January 15th, not January, June 15th, June 15th, June 21st. And I do believe that we shall overcome together. So thank you very much. And thank you very much to the Armed Forces of Ukraine for this unique possibility to study, to learn, to listen to such amusing lecturers as Ema Vyroubalova from Trinity College. Thank you very much. So bye-bye. If there are no any questions, maybe someone would like to add something. So,
Well, thank you, Наталія. Дякую дуже за запрошення на цю подію.
Дякуємо.
Це була велика
Дякуємо.
шана для мене.
Дякуємо.